Welcome, luxury enthusiasts, to the Luxury Travelers Podcast, hosted by Rodney George. The ultimate passport to opulent destinations, extravagant experiences, and unparalleled indulgence. Whether one is a seasoned jet setter or daydreaming of the next lavish getaway, the Luxury Travelers Podcast has it all covered. So buckle up and prepare for a journey into the lap of luxury. Now, your host.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is when you're finally getting around to watching this version of the Luxury Travelers Podcast. I have been trying to get this lady on my show for months and months, but her schedule is a little bit of a conflict. But I'm glad to say that this morning my special guest is Chef Kathryn Kelly, who is the director of the Culinary Centers. If you've ever been on board on Oceania or Regent Seven Seas Cruises, you have to have run into her. So if you haven't been on there, you need to get there, and you're going to find out why today. So Kathryn, welcome to the show.
It's good to see you again. It's been decades we've been at this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking up the other day. I met you 12, 13 years ago.
Probably.
On the Oceania Marina.
That was our first one. We now have 7. So yeah, first cooking school. So we now have 7, opening the 7th in July.
Well, I was reading an article about you the other day, and I popped it up on the screen here so I could take another look at it. But Forbes called you the conceptual architect of the Culinary Enrichment program.
Yeah.
Now, you've done a lot of things in your life, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but an architect now too?
I who can control writers? But yeah, I mean, I think the essence of that Forbes article was that, you know, the program, which is the enrichment program, which includes hands-on cooking, expanded to the chef-led tours, and now we're doing what we call studios or chef tables. That if you will, program, the architecture of that program, not dissimilar to the architecture of any building, kind of starts with somebody with a pen and paper that designs it from the ground up. And I guess in the case of these programs, that would be me. So yeah.
Well, I've had the experience of hanging out with you a few times, and one of my fondest memories was I believe we were in Istanbul and we went to the spice markets.
Yes, yeah. Istanbul's probably, I get asked all the time, like, what are your favorite cities for people to travel that are culinarians? And Istanbul's probably one of the top 5, largely because for hundreds of years when the Ottomans were there, and you remember the Topkapi Palace up at the top of the hill there, that's where the spice road ended, and everything that came from Asia, the spices and the citrus fruits and dried, sort of apricots and all sorts of interesting things came and met the New World ingredients like tomatoes and potatoes and peppers and whatnot. And it all converged there in Istanbul. So the spice market for a lot of culinarians is really a mecca of sorts of the ingredients that traveled around the world that found a home there, and a place where any explorer or any culinarian can truly appreciate. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to share that with you.
Yeah, that and Nice as well. Nice has a big farmers type market.
Yes.
You know, we picked up something that day that I had never seen or heard of, and I've not seen since, but we bought some, I believe it was pomegranates that tasted like tomatoes.
Yes.
Is that possible?
Well, any fruit or vegetable is going to taste like the soil that it's grown in. That's the concept in the wine world that's called terroir. So if we had a pomegranate that tasted like a tomato, it would have been grown in a salty, lava-y kind of a soil. But yeah, I don't remember that, Rodney, but I'm sure after a few glasses of wine, everything tastes like something. So
it does. But is there a place that you've traveled that's really the most inspirational to your hands-on cooking and chef-led tour experiences, other than Istanbul?
Yeah, I was just gonna say Istanbul would probably come top to mind. Not really. I think that the genesis of our program really for me, I mean, I was in my mid 50s when I started with Oceania, and Bob Binder, brought me down.
Right.
The founder of the company, one of the founders, brought me down to the Miami office, and we sort of got to talking. And then, of course, Jock and I have been close for years, as he's been such an influence on everything that we've done. But I think the real, if you will, the genesis of the program and a lot of what we try to do is when people travel, they unlock their curiosity for how the world, the traditions, the foods, the families around the table, the gatherings of, larger groups, weddings,
Right.
festivals, how those really regionally vary from place to place to place. And so I think if it's anything that's an inspiration, it's really seeing how different that is around the world in many cases, but also how similar it is. There's nothing more enchanting than seeing or participating in a bunch of people preparing a meal over a few hours over an open fire in Valencia, and then everybody sits down with a wooden spoon and eats paella, So it's, I think that there isn't any one place. I think it's the mosaic of, where we travel that really reinforces the fact that, there's a lot of joy in gathering and eating and celebrating and just if you will, the reverence for all the people that grow our food and fish it out of the oceans and manage the cycle of a year and the seasons of a year and how things grow. I think this just brings people a little bit closer to that. And that's what we try to do in our program.
Yeah, it really does. And I was fortunate enough to have a good friend of mine who's a James Beard award-winning chef from Dallas on board the Regent Seven Seas Splendor.
Yes.
Just a little over a year ago as the spotlight. And he said, I've been on a lot of cruises in my life, but I've never seen a cruise line that was so focused on the culinary experience from one end of the ship to the other. And I thought, wow, that's a huge compliment coming from an actual James Beard Award winner.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And those James Beard Awards, they don't hand out like popcorn. So that's a real deal chef.
No.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea, he's the last chef in Dallas, Texas to win the James Beard Award, and he won his 25 years ago.
Yeah. No, I worked with the team that worked with him, and he was quite a generous guest. So they were all happy to have him, and sad to see him go. So
yeah, he makes a hell of a margarita too. We had a sea day, and it was kind of gloomy, and so they got him out and
he shaved some jalapeno, if I remember, and made it.
He does everything. The only thing that comes out of a bottle is the tequila and I believe he uses Grand Marnier in his margaritas.
Yeah.
Well, what's new in the cooking schools on Regent and Oceania? I know you're always doing new stuff.
Yeah. So we started out, the origin of the program was really the hands-on cooking schools, and we have on Oceania the Allura that's coming out and Vista that's come out. They have 24 individual stations. The O-Class Marina and Riviera have 12. It's a much more intimate experience on the O-Class ships. With just 12, you get a lot of attention from the chefs. And then on the Regent ships, there are 18 individual stations. So we have sort of a mix, from brand to brand. But that was really our bread and butter. That's what we really perfected for the first few years, and still remains after 14 years the highest rated experience on the ship. So we're really proud of that. But then, as I've mentioned to you many times, I'm sure, early in the program, the guests would ask me, "Chef, what are you doing today when you're going ashore?" And I would, I'm going to this market, or, I don't eat on white tablecloths. I eat out of food trucks. And I try to find, like all chefs, we try to find a little places where, the guy hands you the food who may have actually caught the fish, kind of thing.
Right.
And so that turned into, over the last decade, that turned into a program called the Chef-Led Tours. And we just released for 2025 the 47, I think it is, tours that we're doing around the world, and 12 of them are new. So we worked really hard this year to, we have, for example, tours in Kobe, where we take a group of people out to dinner to a restaurant that celebrates the Kobe beef. And we have a incredible tour in Victoria, British Columbia, where Riviera is sailing for the first time this year, where we go to the Bouchard Gardens and have and have high tea, but also celebrate how flowers can be used to infuse gelato. So we go to their little gelato shop where they make like roseberry.
Oh, how fun is that?
Yeah, and to a bee farm, which is incredible to learn sort of about bee farming. But so we've added a number, and we keep refreshing the program, but super popular with the guests. But to answer your question, the most recent program that we added is called Chef Studio on Oceania and Chef Table on Regent. And during COVID, when we were not able to offer hands-on cooking, but we were back at sea, we gathered the guests at the chef station in the cooking schools in these little high-top bar-type chairs. And we would have a 45 to 60-minute session that the chef would lead, and the chef would, we'd have cocktails or whatever, and then the chef would talk about anything from knife skills, how to buy a knife, how to maintain a knife, how to do practice your knife skills, to how to put a cheese plate together, a cheese course, how the progression of cheeses and selecting from the different classes of cheeses. We did one on, we do one on spices and aromatics. What are the spices that everybody should have in their kitchen? How to make spice blends, aromatics, how to keep, like when you get parsley and 2 days later it wilts in your refrigerator, what chef tip do you have to make them last for, 10, 12 days? So that Chef Studio, Chef Table program has become wildly popular because there are people who really don't want to take a hands-on cooking class, but they're big into food and wine and beverages and whatever. So we, this Chef Table, Chef Studio program, we piloted in 2024 and we're launching it in 2025. Really a fun, intimate chance to just hang out with the chef and ask a lot of in-depth questions. Everybody loves coming to the big theaters, to the presentations that the chefs do, to 400 and 500 people about, this is, how you make, chicken fricassee or whatever. These are the favorite restaurants that we have. Big news, Jacques is coming back.
Yes.
Coming back. Everybody's all excited about that. So we have, so you bring the French chefs up and they tell you how they make all those secret dishes. So this is a more intimate form of that, but it's been a great ad and something that we learned by listening to the guests after the COVID experience of ways to, if you will, just broaden the experience. And as you mentioned with your guest chef, really we're an extension of the brand of the orientation that both Regent and Oceania have to the food that you eat on the ship. That's really important to people. We're all about the culinary experience off the ship and in the cooking schools and so forth. So what's not on the plate that somebody's making for you is sort of our domain. And so we just listen to the guests and what they're interested in and try to build programs around that.
It all goes back to Frank and Bob's, one of their first hires, if not their first hire, was the legendary Jacques Pepin, who you referred to several times here. Just a quick question. The Oceania ship, the new Oceania ship that's going to Victoria, and the Bouchard Gardens. Are you doing that on Regent as well? Because we've got a couple of big groups in Alaska.
Yes. We have all the tours that we do are within the family. So
Okay.
yeah. So if Regent is going to Victoria, that tour will be offered. So when all of the tours the chef-led tours, so for any of your guests, the luxury travelers, they in the know is if it says chef-led, it's one of our chefs, and we now have 20 chefs in our faculty, very diverse, speak lots of languages, have lots of different orientations, different ages, different experiences. That's the most fun part of my job, is that family of gypsy chefs that but the chef-led tours are always led by the onboard faculty that we have for the culinary program. So if you look for those, they're right when you book the tours, but they'll always start with the term chef-led.
Now I'm gonna go into something here, and I haven't mentioned this to you, but I really think that it's an interesting part of your life, and that is that when you and I first met on the Oceania Marina, you shared with the class about your background prior to going to culinary school. You want to tell us a little bit about what you were doing when you had this midlife change of career direction?
Yeah. Well, it was many years ago, but I started out, my career was as a public health, in the public health realm. And so I have masters and all kinds of crap degrees. Is one of those people that, never wanted to quit school. So I just kept getting degrees. But I worked for the U.S. Public Health Service. I was the director of the first U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, which, now seems very outdated, but it was all about when people got vaccinated or got mammograms or whatever, and setting some standards for that. So from a medical and clinical and public health standpoint, it was a really great career. And then I started an internet company that called, with several other people's co-founded an internet company, and that ended up morphing into what we now know as the big, search engines for medicine and medical care. And so I had a really nice run in business, and started a number of companies, worked for some really interesting publicly traded companies over the years. But then when I was in my 50s, sort of got the what everybody aspires to, I guess, or at that time, which is, they buy your company and give you a check the size of the gross domestic product of a third world country and tell you to get out of town. So, and after, building a house on the beach and adopting a dog, because I'd never been able to have a dog in my adult life since I traveled like a fiend, decided retirement really wasn't for me in my mid-50s, even though I'm an avid golfer and I could play golf every day of my life. Went back to culinary school and celebrated my 55th birthday at the Culinary Institute of America, not knowing what I was going to do with that degree, but feeling like it was something I'd always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And a 2-year program, it's very intense. But and that's where I met Jock, and then the rest, as they say, is just history. So yeah. But I'm getting ready to celebrate my 15th year with the company. We now have 20 full-time or faculty, they're contract employees for us, but chefs that work in the program on the 7 ships around the world. And it's been a great joy. I mean, I built a lot of companies and circulated them into the world economy, but nothing has been as fulfilling as the last 15 years. I love working for Oceania and Regent. Jason Montague is
Yes.
just an absolutely Frank and his son. Talk about a progeny. I feel like LeBron James has nothing, on Frank Del Rio. His son is amazing, and so it's a big happy family. And when you don't have to work, really, for I'm turning 70 next year. Lots of reasons to retire, but I'm not even on the radar screen. When you work in a family of people that are just incredible, really, and I think we're a good testimonial, those of us in the culinary world, because we particularly in our program, we're around guests all the time. So we get to talk to guests all the time. We get to hear what they like and what they don't like. But you can't do a job like this, which takes you away. You're at sea a lot. You can't do that unless you work in a company where you believe that they really care about you and they care about the guests. And it's not BS. It's really real. And I'd be the first person to tell you if it wasn't. You know me that well. But yeah, it's really. I mean, it's been great to see the investment the company continues to make in making sure that people have a really good culinary experience when they're at sea. I mean,
It's been all about the food from day one, hasn't it?
it has, but it's interesting. I think the one thing that I've noticed that because I've just hired 3 chefs from competitor organizations whose sort of culinary enrichment programs have kind of faltered. I think what I find fascinating is there's as much of a investment and orientation to what you eat on the ship, that your dining experience on the ship is extraordinary. There's as much focus on that as there is on the fact that people who care about food and who care about the excellence of that also care or are interested in the culinary arts around the world. And
Exactly.
so investment, if you look at any of our facilities, the actual physical facilities where we teach the hands-on cooking, or the studios that we have on Allura and Vista, for example. I've been working with the head of hotel operations, Franco Cimararo, on all the ships that we're building 5 years from now. I mean, they're designed now because they have to be. The financial commitment that the company's made to the culinary arts, not only inside the kitchens, but to the interest that people have in the culinary arts around the world, or just food and wine and the dining experience and the culinary history. I think that's pretty extraordinary, and I think that's in the DNA of the company because of the 2 people that you mentioned, our 2 founders. But I also think that the continuation of that passion shows up. You mentioned the word architecture when we first got started. The architecture of every ship has an orientation to, not only how are the restaurants laid out and what opportunities do we have to follow culinary trends, or as in the case of the Jacques restaurant, listen to our
Coming back.
exactly. But also, if you look at the facilities that we're building for culinary enrichment, it's a financial commitment that when you see it, you understand. Oh yeah, they're really serious about this. So
Well, you know what? It goes all the way back to pull a quote from one of my favorite movies, A Field of Dreams. If we build it, they will come.
they will come. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And folks, if you've not experienced the culinary arts kitchens on Regent and Oceania, you really missed it, especially if you're a foodie or you're a wannabe foodie or think you're a foodie. You got to experience this. I mean, the very first class, I call it Culinary Arts 101. Learn how to make pasta. Kathryn taught me how to make pasta years ago, and I still make it the same way.
Well, the fact that you make it is rare, because I have a favorite pasta shop where they make the pasta. The woman's Italian. She's making pasta. I live in Austin, Texas, and it's called Pasta and Co. And I go all the time and pick it up, and I feel guilty because I think I know how to do this, but then it's so gorgeous. But the fact that you do know how to do it is I get emails from our guests all the time with, oh my gosh, I never thought I could do this. And I've got one guest who said he never ate vegetables, and we made ratatouille in Nice.
Yes.
And he now, it's sends me pictures of all of his vegetable dishes and whatever. So yeah, it's those little triumphs in life. But until you travel, you really, I think the beauty of traveling as an adult is that you open yourself up to.
You do.
I say to people all the time, just here's a restaurant, go there for lunch. Be sure to order this, okay? And even though you may want to order something else, order this and try it. And I think it is the studies are, back to my medical background, that, the studies are pretty provocative that the adult brain really does need exercise, and travel is a great exercise for the brain. Hearing different languages, learning how to navigate a street that you've never, or a city that you've never walked in before, eating food that you've never tried before. All those things are good for us. They're
Yes.
for our soul, but they're also good for our brain. And as we age, we have to, open ourselves up to new experiences. So I think, what you do and your clients and our guests do, to make sure that they're traveling, but also that, they're experiencing things while they're traveling. I think that's really, really important. I think it's increasingly important after COVID, where we all realize that, we have expiration dates, so let's get at it. Let's
Yes, ma'am.
go out there and travel and see the world. And
We should get your pasta lady together. I have a lady here in Naples, Florida, and her business is called
Makes a sauce?
the Sauce Lady. Yes. And she's a little Italian lady. You can go in there and you can buy it fresh or you can buy it frozen. And
Right.
even though the directions are on it, on how to warm it up, she has to tell you herself.
Yeah, I made lasagna for my family for New Year's Eve, and which I do frequently. And we're all getting together for the Super Bowl. And they said, "Oh, could you make that great pasta again?" And my daughter said, "Yeah, I know it takes a long time to make the pasta." And I just looked at her and started laughing and said, "Nope, I make the bolognese, but somebody else does the pasta." So.
Well, a real lasagna is going to take you most of the day.
Oh, you have to do it a couple days ahead of time.
Yeah. And but as long as there's wine there, it seems to make the time go much faster.
Exactly.
Well, Chef, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show, and I want you to know that I had to really be persistent because it's hard to catch a moving target. But I really appreciate you being on the show. And folks, if you have not experienced this, you pick up the phone and call us. These beautiful new ships with the Culinary Center. You just got to get your hands in there and start really learning what it's like and learning from world-class chefs.
What I would say also is the culinary hands-on programs and the tours sell out really quickly. But I always schedule classes when I know there's a big waiting list or whatever. We always leave space to add classes. So people get very frustrated with the fact that they maybe can't book online because we post the classes sometimes a year in advance and they sell out in minutes. But once you get on board, we always do an open house. Come to the open house, talk to whoever the chef instructor is, and we oftentimes open up classes, but only for the people that are on the wait list, so get on the wait list. We also ask people to come a couple minutes before class because there's always no-shows, and we have a new policy that we just installed, which is if you're not there 5 minutes after the class starts, you get the standbys get in, and it's a courtesy to the people that are the no-shows.
Sure.
If you're doing something else and you forgot to call us, no big deal. We'll just put somebody in your place. But we try, as even though we are in pretty high demand, we try to accommodate people that have not been able to get sign up online. So it's frustrating sometimes to see that the classes are full, but there's usually open spaces. And if you're persistent and you want to take a class, just let us know. We're usually able to make that work.
Well, Chef Kelly, I could sit here and talk to you all day long because I have a passion for food. I have a passion for learning more about the world. So I really appreciate your time, and this was a lot of fun. And folks, just remember one thing, and Chef kind of touched on it a little bit just a couple of minutes ago, and that is my closing statement to you is enjoy yourself. It's later than you think.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Luxury Travelers Podcast. For more information, head on over to luxurytravelerspodcast.com to connect with our team or leave us a message. Until next time, safe travels and savor the extraordinary.